Hey guys, welcome back to aud206. This is class 5, and Eric in the forums had a great suggestion to use the transformer sound effect for the Mega Boss's airship gun reveal before it starts shooting at stuff. And I thought it'd be fun to actually create the Transformers 5-beat sound instead of just going on the web and pulling down the 80s clip from a bad VHS dub. So to do that, I went after a plugin I have here in Nuendo. Unfortunately, Adobe Audition doesn't do MIDI at all. So generally when I'm building sound effects and actually even mixing, I use Nuendo as my primary DAW. A lot of the same principles apply across both. So if I just bypass these for a second, I'll show you Massive. Massive is a virtual instrument, and a good one at that. It's made by Native Instruments. So how this works, there are 2 sawtooth oscillators in here. They're pitched pretty close, but a little bit dissonant to get a little bit of that edge. And then there's a noise generator as well. And then these are, using this slider, you can tell them all to go to filter 1, which is what they're doing. And then filter 1 over here is set to a high-pass filter that is then automating the cutoff based off of this step filter over here. You see it's a stair-step filter. So if I play a note, you can hear the beginnings of the sound in there. And you can even see it kind of go across here. So in addition to this, there's an LFO, a low frequency oscillator, which I can adjust the rate of this. And actually this rate is also feeding into, as you can see, the number 5. How this works in Massive is you just drag the LFO that you want into the parameter you want it to automate. So LFO 5 is defining the rate. And then that is the stair stepping that is the gap that's in between the notes is because of the stair step. If I change this to like a sine wave, it has a different tone to it. Or there's even, all kinds of different crazy stuff you can do. But the stair step works fine. Okay, so then this filter. Without this filter, it would just stay the same. As you can tell here, not changing, but the filter is what's giving you the. All right, so then the output of this is then feeding a couple things. First, it's feeding a vocoder, which is where that's where we're getting that sound from. And I built a preset here, and I'll give you guys these presets as well if you have Massive, or if you want to buy it and play around with it. You'll need something like Logic or Nuendo or Cubase or Pro Tools in order to use it because it needs a MIDI input source. But regardless, I'll give you this Transformers RP preset that I made, and then this is a pretty decent vocoder, this Matrix 2. So the original dry signal that's coming in is this, and then the wet or the vocoded. So I'm doing a blend between the two to kind of pass some of that. So I felt like that was a pretty good match. I could certainly play around with that a whole lot more and come up with something a little different, but yeah. So the vocoder is what gives you a lot of that kind of computer voicing. Matching it 100% to the 80s version is a little difficult because each vocoder brand has their own tone and style. It's almost like picking a different keyboard. So each vocoder, if you have Ableton Live, that has a good vocoder within it, and you can get a similar sound to this, but it's going to be different. So each vocoder sounds different. And then I'm just doing a little EQ on the end here, just a little high pass filter to clean up some of this bottom rumble if it's kind of farts out if it's not in there. So yeah, so let's just record this in. Here we go. So there's a little bit of a glitch there at the end that we can do. And then the nice thing about this is, so if I play this, all right, so then if I reverse this, the transformers either build up or... So, all right, so I'm just going to bounce that and we'll rename this. We'll call it Transformer SFX RP, and then I'll give you guys this file as well to work with in the session. All right, so let's switch over to Adobe Audition. So I'm going to go ahead and save this out as a new file to start us here. We'll call this mix, and then I'll pick our class 5 files just to get that in the right spot. All right, say save. Okay, so now we got that set. Let me bring in our transformer sound. So I'll import that from our class 5 files, transformer, and say open. Just listen to it. Sounds like it. So we go down to our I think that'd be a good spot for that. Play that. Yeah, works pretty well. Let's see how it works in the mix. The other thing I just noticed is that garage door open on it. That could be fun to add in. Garage door open. Yeah, something like that. But create a new copy on that. I'll create a new copy on this one as well. I think if it's too big of a file, so let me just delete some of this stuff. Get rid of these weird noises in there. All right. Let's see what this sounds like. timing works out pretty well too. Let's go to multi-track. Shorten the file in the waveform editor, but that's okay. And completely neglected the fact that there's a helicopter, which usually helicopter blades are kind of fun to add in. Yeah, we'll do that. Apple Shift C to create a unique copy. We got a transformer sound. We got a little bit of that weapon swish, and then we have this door open. So I think we've pretty much all the other sounds that we need are going to be included with the game footage here. Yeah, so we're just supplementing a little bit by adding in some sounds. Okay, so one of the first things we need to consider is where this is going to be shown. And from what I can tell, this is going to be a web distribution. So it's going to be uploaded to Vimeo or uploaded to YouTube. And then one thing to consider with things that are going to the web is some laptop computers, especially Apple MacBook Pros, the speakers don't get very loud. And therefore, you need to create a louder mix when things are going to go to web. Otherwise, if you mix it quieter in a more kind of analog friendly range, you know, if you remember back to your old cassette days or whatever, where you would keep your levels around 0, well, that's actually minus 20 on this scale. So there's 20 dB of headroom above 0 in analog. So if you were to mix down there, such as commercials average at about minus 24. Some laptops, you know, even when you turn them all the way up, they don't get loud enough to really experience that. So to keep that in mind, this is a dBFS meter down here. So that means decibels full scale. It's also a peak meter. So it's only going to show the peak information. So there are options as far as the range that you can look at, but you can't necessarily look at the RMS level. And the RMS is the average signal strength. If you were to set your meter with a bass guitar is all average signal. There's no transients, there's no peaks, there's no clicks, if that makes sense. It's just a solid tone. Versus a snare drum is almost all transient. The initial snap, the tsh, that's all transient. So, but on a meter, even though they're going to show up similarly, the snare drum will sound quieter if you set them at the same level, because the average, the RMS level is how we perceive loudness. All that to be said, we need a better meter than what's available here. And there's a free one out there that I suggest you get, and it is on Voxengo's website. Voxengo sells a lot of plugins for sale, but they do have a couple that are for free. And one of them is the span meter. So go ahead and download it. I've already downloaded it. So it's a pretty simple install. I'll go ahead and install the VST3 version. The main difference between VST2 and VST3 is VST3 will auto-detect whether it's a mono channel or a stereo channel, and it'll put the appropriate channel count into your spot, so you don't need to create a separate mono version, stereo version, surround version. A single plugin will know how many channels you have and put the appropriate iteration of the plugin on the channel for you. So the next step is, if you haven't installed a plugin before, in Audition, you have to go to the Effects Audio Plugin Manager, and then you have to scan in your plugins. All right, so on Apple, the default location for plugins to be installed is in this Library Audio Plugins folder. On Windows, if it's a VST, usually they get installed into either a Steinberg VST plugins folder, or under program data, there's a common folder, and then common VST2 or VST3. You can also specify when you install the plugin where you want it to go, and then in here you can specify that folder. So then you just scan for the plugins, and it's going to find what you have in your system. And hopefully, if all goes well, span will show up. Say OK. And then what you need to do is go down to your master bus. So what we're actually going to feed everything through. Go to your effects rack. And then I like to put it in at the end of the chain. So we'll go to VST3, Analyzer, Vox-Angle Span. And then by default, it's going to give you the full scale readout of dBFS. So we'll switch that over to K12 for now. So it essentially moves the 0 line down to -12, and then it shows you 12 dB of headroom. But this is helpful for when you hit play and your average level comes across here. It's still really important to mix to your ears and to perceive volume changes and all that kind of stuff. But it's also nice to have a visual reference to see what's going on here. So we're going to keep this in our back pocket. We'll close it for now because it takes up so much screen space. But we'll definitely look at it when we feel like we have a good balance going, and then we can adjust our overall to where it needs to be. So now that we got that, let's take a look at our picture here. So I'm going to start with just the music and the voice and get those working really well together. We have our voice channel that has all of this kind of craziness going on. For the time being, if I turn off the pitch shifter, just so we can get a sense of what most projects that you would work on won't have a pitch shifted voice. So.
Pro Force! Oh, hell yeah!
One of the first things I usually do is ride the volume automation of the music around the voiceover track. I'll go ahead and drag our music bus up to where the voice track is, so we can see what we're doing. Any day now. Okay. So here we go. If I change this to volume, now I have a rubber band volume automation here. So.
Pro Force! Oh, hell yeah!
Okay, so we got this volume automation here. What I generally do is I'll park the cursor at the end of the word and then tap in a couple keyframes here. And so we're in here. This just works for me. The rise and fall around the words usually works out pretty well. So 3 dB of push in between words seems to work out pretty well for me. So.
Oh, hell yeah!
So that feels pretty natural that it starts climbing as the word falls off, and then it's down by the time the word kicks in. So again, we'll just use a little duck there, and then this isn't totally perfect. You have to listen and make sure that you're getting out of the way of the words.
Freedom.
But having the music climb up again kind of keeps the energy, keeps the excitement going. But it is a bit of a task too. If you have a volume controller, you can do it. Or if you have a control surface that has a fader, you can certainly ride the volume with the fader. And then a couple more down there. So I'm holding down the Command or Control key on Windows to select multiple points. And another way to go about this, and if you don't have multiple music tracks here, you can just create an edit point at the start of the word. So if start of the word here, create an edit point, and then actually draw in a crossfade around the word. And then you can change the volume of the incoming clip, and then it'll fall off into the second clip here. So that's just another way to do the exact same thing. Sometimes that's quicker, but in this case we have two files feeding our music bus. And certainly when we get to doing sound effects, it would take forever to do that kind of work. So we'll continue forward with this. However you go about it, the gist is to, there's a million different ways to adjust the volume in here. You can do it with plugins. You can do it in the effects rack. You can do it under the properties. There's basic settings. Clip gain here, which is different than the volume here, which is different than each individual track's volume automation. So there's as many different ways to adjust the volume as you want to use. I just find that feeding the group of clips to a bus and then doing this once to the bus gives me the most control when I want to do one procedure to the whole track. All right. Sometimes in these shorter intervals, you can just do a single point.
Swine. Mother. Zip line.
Oh, we have our beep there, but that's fine. That'll work. Once you get used to this, you can start eyeballing where stuff is.
Coconuts. Online multiplayer. And all this.
Such language. And then at the end, and sometimes at the beginning, it might make sense to push this even beyond our 0. We can give this an extra push up to clear the end. Yeah. Great. So then let's add in our game sounds. Make sure that we're covering what we need to cover here. One quick note about the music track. If you find that your dialogue is not cutting against the music, chances are there's an instrument or something that's in the same range tonally as the dialogue. My go-to in that area is around the 2K mark, and I'll show you why. So I added a parametric EQ here. So we'll find 2K. Do a pretty narrow width. So if I play the music and I boost a bunch of 2K, you'll see it starts competing against the dialogue.
Pro Force! Oh, hell yeah!
There's actually not much 2K information in the track at that point. Let's cut down on here a little bit.
You pros! Pronin! Yeah!
Sometimes there's a squealing guitar, sometimes there's a saxophone or other instruments that are in the dialogue range. And somewhere around here, oftentimes, if you just scoop out a little bit of that 2K.
You pros! Pronin! Yeah!
Your voice has space to cut through. Additionally, compressing your dialogue so that it maintains the same level. There's a really good chance that your music is going to be heavily compressed to stay at the same volume throughout the whole thing, or within a few dB. You know, this is representative of that. It's clipped at digital 0, and it's, you know, probably the average in this. Doesn't deviate much volume-wise. The human voice, on the other hand, does deviate quite a bit. So you can bring down some of those louder points to match the lower points using a compressor. In addition to EQ, you may find that you might want to, add some compression to the music track. You might want to add some reverb to it. It's whatever you feel is going to better the overall piece. You have the tools. The music's not off limits, so to speak, when you're doing your final mixdown. And sometimes it could benefit greatly from having some reverb added to it or some compression. So let's give a listen to our voice and our music together with the goofy pitch shifted vocal effect here, enabled to make sure that we're still cutting on top. All right, let's take a look at this again. So I think I'm just going to ease off on that Q some to get a little bit more highs going. Yeah. And I just need to remind myself why I scooped 500 out. Yeah. Just sounds kind of tubby without that in there. We're actually peaking around -12 down here. So again, you can see the peaks are staying pretty close to where they need to be. Let's go down to that span meter on our master and just take a look at what the average is doing. So you can see we're staying pretty consistent right around this -8 mark with the average. I felt like the music cut out a little too soon on that one. So let's take a look and see what's that's about. And my eyeball was off a little bit there. My eyeball estimation. we'll get that a little bit more closer to the middle. I can even cheat it just a touch because the music kind of falls off at the same point.
Amazing features. Mega bosses. Bees. Tactical swine. Zipline. Coconuts.
So this is going to our vocal bus as well. I think I'm going to slide this voice bus up here so we can make some adjustments if we need to. Shrink it down, just drag it up. All right. Drop the music under the music. Give myself a little room. So if I needed to ride some volume of the dialogue, there's a couple different ways to go about that as well. If you increase the clip gain at this point, it's going to push harder into our compressor. And the output, since we're set the ratio so high, the output's not going to change drastically. So if I set this clip to like plus 10, for example, and then I drive into this compressor. So you didn't really notice much of a difference, right? Now, compare that to increasing the volume of the output of this whole chain here. And I, turn up this overall, even just, it's like -6. So if I go to -3. That's a pretty major difference, but certainly if I do with this now too. So this is 9 dB up. So where you adjust your clip gain kind of matters, especially once you start stacking effects in here. So again, if I increase this to 10, it's just going to drive into that compressor a lot harder. See, it's digging down to -18. For whatever reason, it's the sync on the track versus the compressor. The compressor is activated early on here. I'm not sure why, but see how it's punching down to -20. So anyway, just something to think about, especially when you're mixing. Pushing into the compressor harder will give you more level. It'll also impart more of the characteristic of the compressor. It's going to get more of that pumpy sound, which in this case sounds good. It's what I'm going after. But if you just needed to ride on top of the music just a little bit, a little bump here and there on this bar, it's going to probably give you a little bit more of what you're looking for. All right, so let's mix in our game sound effects and make sure that those are cutting through good. Let me back up. let me grab my game sounds bus. Again, this is just one approach in how to mix. I tend to work this way because typically communicating the message, which is the dialogue, is typically the more important thing that needs to happen. And then the music can often be one of the more dense elements in the track. It's taking up a lot of spectrum of the sound, so bass to treble or 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. There's music typically has a lot of dense elements within it, and it's already mixed. So getting elements to work within that space is important since that's what's provided, and we have to use it. So I oftentimes, I don't linger a long time on, working on individual elements, but I will oftentimes start with the dialogue, move on to the music, move on to the sound effects in a mix, and add those elements in as they go to make sure that the integrity of the communication piece, the dialogue, is staying intact. Now, we do have these game sounds here that they seem to be all over the place volume-wise, and I think this might be a good opportunity to use a compressor, not so much for the character component, but for just reining in the different volumes, because there's elements in here. Let me just kill the voice and the music for a sec. So this might be just to mute the sound effects down here for the time being. So if I solo the game sounds, this part right here, so those are all helpful, but volume-wise, it's all over the map. So if I take my bus here, again, if I had multiple tracks in here of game sounds, this would be helpful to group them all down to one funnel, so to speak. And I'm going to insert an EQ before here. We'll reset this back to the default. Just grab the default setting. And then let's grab a compressor. We can use that tube model one again. So what we're looking for is to clean up some of the spectrum. We have a lot of sub stuff going on in our own sound design, and the music has some low frequency stuff as well. So we kind of need to save some space down there for that. We need to represent the game sounds, obviously, but we have some freedom as far as how much of the spectrum we're going to give it. So I might bring this up to about 80 to start and see where that fits us. This can be a bit of a tough call because you want some low frequency information down there. And obviously when you're playing the game, the sound designers who did the game want you to have a full frequency experience. So, high frequencies and low frequencies. But we need to start choosing what goes where. If we have a lot of low frequency content from the game sounds, then we have a lot of low frequency content from the music and from our own sound design. The separation of the elements starts falling apart. I kind of feel like it needs either a little bit of this 300 to 400 removed. Oh, we're in that 96 mode again. So let's try that again. I just know we have a lot of stuff going on in this range. And then I want to add a little bit of that kind of top end sparkle to help some of these effects cut through the mix. Maybe bring in some of that low end again. Okay, and then next, we're going to set this up to compress. Oh, I probably need to, anytime you add some boost here, it might make sense to drop the output down a touch so that you're not clipping. Go to a loud spot. Cool. Drop this down pretty strong here. Gain makeup, yeah, we can give ourselves about 6 dB push. Let's try a 4:1 ratio to start. Now the attack, I'm going to go really fast, which means I'm going to drop this down to maybe 1 millisecond because I don't want to impart a lot of that characteristic, that compressor sound characteristic to it. And I'm going to do a longer release time so that it just drops the level and then it relaxes when the loud part passes. So you'll see the level meter will be kind of staying pretty smooth. It won't be pumping around. So that's a good example. So this is without the compressor. Actually, let me pull up that span meter. I think that'll be helpful. Look at this. So look at the section. All right, so I hit about -6, but the quieter part through here is way down to -26. So now if I turn on the compressor, you see that it didn't even get down to -16, but the top stayed about the same. So -6, and then that was at -16 versus it dropping all the way down to -26. Let's get this to mix in here pretty good. So that's a spot where I think these sound effects can really come to the forefront. Sounds like I'm doing a medical ad. To the forefront of medical medicine. So I'll just push these up a couple dB. Now here's a case where the sound effects are split left and right. And in my opinion, I think it's a little bit too wide, actually. I think the gun is almost the center of the frame where the sound's coming out, but it's almost all left channel. And then this explosion that happens over here, that's pretty far right, but it feels like it's only coming out of the right speaker. So, I have to turn the compressor back on. All right, so to do that, Audition has a plugin called, under stereo imagery, called Stereo Expander. And how this works is you can make things go even wider if you want. You can go to 200% here. And if I solo this, you'll really hear the left and right. So super wide, but I'm going to drop it to 50% and see if that feels more in line with what I was hoping for. Yeah, I think so. This is something that we can automate as well. Under the under here, we can go to the stereo expander and we can put in the stereo expander in here. And if there's moments like this where it's just this section that I wanted to narrow it down, I can return this to 100 or thereabouts if it lets me. And that means it's going to stay the normal stereo width until it gets to this point, and it'll drop down. We can actually watch it do that. Here. So I'll move down. So any parameter within a plugin is automatable using the keyframe track here. So it's really just a matter of knowing what you want to adjust and where. Let's look at this spot here. I'm just visually seeing that this one is pretty heavy in the left channel. Yeah, that actually works out pretty well because it explodes as he's jumping off frame. Okay, so let's listen to this down again and see how it's feeling. Okay, my only thought at this point is that it is, as much as I like it, I think our game sounds are just too loud. So I'm dropping down 3 dB and see how that fits. I think that freedom is out of sync. Let me check that. I'm assuming that's supposed to hit when the flag hits. So we need to move our music here. So I thought the volume in this section with the guns came in a little strong. So I'm going to drop that down just a little bit. Let's play over that again. Actually want that that gun sound to pop out too, because I really like that. So that's actually standing up pretty well in and of itself. And I think the next thing would be to add in our sound design. However, I'm going to change this up a little bit, and I'm actually going to just solo all of our sound design and see how it's working together in and of itself. And in the film world, this is called pre-mixing or pre-dubbing. So you do a sound effects premix or a dialogue premix or music premix. The idea is that when the elements get to the final mix stage, each one works in and of itself by itself. So you can add the dialogue on top of it and the sound effects sound good by themselves. I'm going to shrink this down just a hair to be able to see more of these effects. All right. All right, so first of all, those are too big. So let me see which ones they are. So just by looking at the waveform, I can tell that these three are probably the culprits. Now, there's not a way, at least as far as I know, in Audition to grab the volume bar on multiple clips together. What you can do is go to Properties and go to Clip Gain, and we can drop this down, say like -6. Now, that's not adjusting the bar -6, it's just adding a clip gain to the clip. So we can, maybe we need a little bit more than that. And then maybe bring these guys in with it. So this might be a little loud. Tell you right now, I think these are too loud. How many more in that zip line? A little late. Looks like we clipped somewhere. Yeah, these are loud again. So drop that down. Just kind of massage these volumes a little bit more. Just try and get a little bit more attack out of it as they punch up. I think this section here. All right, so let's look at again. The benefit of busting things down is that you can do things to the overall signal path of all your sound effects. All these sound effects, I think, would benefit from maybe just pushing up the highs just a little bit, kind of like what we did with the game sound effects as well. So, just a little bit of a shelf on the top end. We have plenty of low end, maybe a little too much actually. We can shape that just a little bit here. Clean up some of that low mid as well, around 200. And this is just things that I'm hearing as I'm listening through what I would do in this particular case. So now, one thing I'm noticing is that all of our sound effects, as they kind of add up, we are clipping the input of our bus here. So just a quick way to fix that is if we highlight all of our clips here, minus 10 on these, and now they're all that might have been too much. Let's try it again. Maybe just 4 dB. Okay. So we'll go back to our sound effects bus. We added in that EQ. I typically don't, but in this case, it might work to help us balance some of the stuff out since we have so much going on, to add in a little bit of a compressor. I don't think I'll push too much on this, but maybe just graze it a little bit. Just those louder points, just to keep them in control. So ratio, do like a 3:1, and then attack. I'm okay with letting some of those peaks cut through. In this case, and then release. Let's do a nice, reasonable release. Let's take a look and see how much that's pushing. Two. It looks like we're still peaking too much. Back to properties. -8. Yeah, these are. I meant for these white flashes to be more of a felt thing than a. Okay. Other applications. Other applications such as Pro Tools, Nuendo, Logic. When you do a clip gain like this, it actually adjusts in proportionate to the others. Now I just got burned because this clip gain adjusts everything to this number. And I always forget that when I work in Audition, is that the clip gain is not proportional, it's fixed. So when I did that, I lost the those volume changes I did earlier to this group of clips here, as well as the adjustments I made to this whole section here. So if you recall, I had dropped this down to -9 and then -6 before I even started working on this, but now they're all -8. So just a good reminder for me too that, each app works a little differently. I feel that this should be a feature that it should behave the way I described, where if I highlight all these clips, and then I want to drop all these clips by 3 dB, it should know that the -8 ones will go down to -11 and the -14 will go down to -17 and the -17 will go to -20. But it doesn't. So even if I grab the wheel here at 0, it starts adjusting them all to the same number. So, lesson learned. So these guys, I wanted to drop -14. All right, so let's see how that's working in the mix here. There's a really good chance we'll need to write some automation in here as well. So right away, I'm feeling the game sounds are still probably a touch on the loud side. Bring those down. I need some more resolution on that. And I think our sound effects, we're losing them now. So let's just bring them up to 0 and see how that works. I'm just going to do a global adjustment. I think we're really close. It's just that kind of fine detail stuff where you know, it's that last 20% in a mix to get things to sit really well together. I think we have all the appropriate pieces together right now. It's just a matter of getting them to gel and sit really well together. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's give that a shot. Losing a little bit too much of the voice. That's the wrong move to pull that back. right, so those clicks at the end are definitely way too loud. So one thing I'm feeling here is there's a couple different ways you can do this. I think for this case, I'm going to just add another track to add some reverb to the sound effects. Some of them are just feeling a little close, and I want to push them back into the mix a little bit. So to do that, oh, I had the wrong thing. So let's remove that track. There's a couple different ways you can go about it. You can either add a separate bus and then have the reverb on the bus and then have the bus feed your output. One of the things I was going to show you, though, is splits output, and that kind of messes up that workflow. So the other way you could go about it is to insert it directly onto your sound effects group, just like we've been doing everything else. I guess I'll use the built-in one again. It's the studio verb, yeah. So I'm going to use the Great Hall again, but drop the decay a little bit here. So I'll give this a solo. So this is a case where I want to mess around with this wet and dry relationship. So I think I'm even going to drop it even more. So it's just a little bit of verb is getting in there. So it's 80% of the dry signal, 20% of the wet reverb sound. So especially with those clicks there, we're getting a little bit sense of space on them. So we added reverb to these, I remember, but some of these other clicks could benefit from them. You know what, let me boost this up to 50 just to get a comparison, make sure it's working. I think it's these highs that I want to get some more of. Yeah. So back that back down to, let's try 30 and 70. All right. So let's see how those are working now with the whole thing. All right. I would say that mix is coming together for sure. At this point, that last 10% is going in and, individually adjusting any sound effects that need to be tweaked, maybe pushing specific words out if you're losing some of the words. Even some of these game sounds, I feel like we're losing just a touch of these knives. I think we could use a couple more of these knives sound effects to pop out as he's running through here. So it's just, making small little adjustments to kind of finesse it around these areas. And I think sound effects, I'm gonna pop this back up to like -1 just to see how we're doing here. I think we're squashing a little bit too much of the dynamics out of this with the compressor. Losing a lot of that punch that we built into that. Transformer sound now is sticking out like a sore thumb. Let's save that. Let's try that. I think these hum pieces that we put in are just a little prominent. Is that one? Yeah. Hum. All right. Great. So the only thing left to do, and I think that mix is working pretty well. Now, at this point, I would probably send it off to the client to see what they thought, and then they would send a bunch of changes to me and say, okay, we need to change this, this, and this, and it's a bit of back and forth until we're both happy, and then At this point, we have some headroom left. And like I said, this is for web, so it really, I really think it's a good idea to push things up when distributing on the web. So we look at this. Looks like we got about 8 dB or so of headroom to do this. You can do it here. You can just turn it up, 8 dB. But there's a good chance you'll clip, so that's not the best idea. A better idea is to use a level maximizer or a brick wall limiter if you have one. In Audition, they have something called hard limiter. So here you tell it the maximum level. So I'll do 0.5 minus down. Input boost, we set about 8 dB is what we're doing. And then this lookup ahead time and release time are pretty average. Those are decent to stick. So now I can watch this down again and check it out. There you go. I think that's a decent mix for web for this piece. So now one of the things that a client will often ask for is splits. And how you do that is we can actually do an export multi-track mix down. Actually, let me set a range. So I'm going to set the start of the file and then a little bit after the end, my in and out point. And then if I go to export, multi-track mixdown time selection, we have these, export window as you would expect. So let me drop down to our project folder, media, class files. And just for my own workflow, I always standardize by making an export folder within there to call this. We'll call this aud206 Broforce mix. So save. 48 kilohertz is fine. Bit depth, I usually go 24-bit just to make it compatible with as many systems as needed. And then here's the interesting thing that you can do. So we will take the master stereo output, as you would expect, but I'll also take the output from my buses. So I'll do a music, a voice, game sound, and sound effects. Now, the only problem is they're not at mix level because we put this limiter on our master output. But if we didn't do that, and we put this hard limiter on each one of these outputs, we could do a batch export and just do it in one output and get all the files all in one go. And definitely for the next project, we'll do that because we'll set up stereo buses and surround buses so that they all able to be exported together. But for this case, we're just going to take our stereo output and say okay, and we'll call this, I like to put stereo mix on there. And we say okay, it bounces it down. All right, and then next what you would just do is you would solo the voice pass export. So multi-track times selection, and just highlight that file to get the naming. And then instead of mix, we'll call it voice. We can call it VO for short. Voiceover, then hit export. Okay, and then next we'll grab our music bus and do the same thing. Export time selection. Music. So the idea is if you give these mixes back to an editor or someone who's going to master these to a video project, if they need to make an edit or they need to work with these separate elements, as long as they keep them at 0 dB, the mix will stay intact. We can lump all of this together, game SFX and standard sound effects and beeps. They all would fall under sound effects. So export mix down time. And call it SFX. So one small thing that we didn't touch on, but we'll definitely explore more in the next class, especially with surround sound, is panning. Most of our effects were stereo effects here, so they have both left and right channel information. Gives you a little bit of stereo imaging. But you can certainly work with panning to help create a fuller mix and a denser mix, but also to follow the action with things on the screen. So, all this being said, that about covers it for our Broforce trailer. And if you guys want to get a jump on next week's project, I've included that in this week's files as well. There's the MOG205 project movie. So feel free to get a jump on this as well. And I will see you guys next time. Take care.